They didn't just take my research, they took 7 years of my life and threw it away like a piece of corporate scrap. My name is Aurora Carter, and at 28, I just suffered the most ruthless betrayal of my life. My father, the man who once told me I was destined for greatness, just handed my life's work, 7 years of relentless research, to my stepsister, Madison. He did it with a casual arrogance as if he were merely shifting pieces on a corporate chessboard. He thinks I'll break, he thinks I'll beg, he thinks I'll accept this like a dutiful daughter. But I'm not crying. Madison is basking in her stolen victory, my father is reveling in his control, and Carter Pharmaceuticals is parading my research as if I never existed. They believe they've won. They believe I'll fade into irrelevance. They have no idea what's coming. Because unlike them, I saw this coming. And while they think they've won, they have no idea that they've just walked into a game I've been playing far longer than they realize. The call came on a Monday afternoon. I was in my lab at Stanford, finishing up my final report on my targeted drug delivery system, a breakthrough that could change everything for cancer treatment. My phone vibrated on the desk. Dad. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Aurora. His voice crackled through the receiver, casual, businesslike. I've transferred your research patent to Madison. She deserves it more than you. She'll know how to properly commercialize it. For a second, my brain refused to process the words. Transferred, deserves it more than me. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. You can't do that, my voice came out even, controlled. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I knew better than to give him the reaction he wanted. His scoff was almost amused. Of course I can. Carter Pharmaceuticals funded your research. Everything you developed belongs to the company. And as CEO, I decide who handles what. A pause. I could picture his smug expression, the one he always wore when he thought he was putting me in my place. Madison has the business acumen you lack, he added. I glanced at my laptop screen. An email sat open, sent from the US Patent Office, confirming receipt of my independent application 3 months ago. He had no idea what he'd just walked into. I took a slow breath, forced a small smile. Well, I said, voice calm, I hope Madison enjoys trying to commercialize research she doesn't understand. Silence. Just for a second. He'd expected tears, protests, maybe even begging. My lack of reaction had thrown him off balance. That's all, he said stiffly. I'll have legal send over the transfer papers. Good luck with that. I ended the call before he could respond, and then I moved. I sent a quick text to my lawyer, Sarah Martinez. He did it just like we predicted. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with her reply. Perfect. The moment they attempt the transfer, the USPTO will flag the patent as already filed. We're ready. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, my hands still shaking, not from fear, from anticipation. They thought they were taking something from me. But what they didn't realize was that this game had started months ago. I thought back to the day it all began. 2 years ago, my father remarried, Deanne. With her came Madison, the golden child, the perfect stepdaughter, the MBA graduate from an online program she boasted about as if it were Harvard. At first, I tried to be civil. I even tried to work with her when she joined Carter Pharmaceuticals as head of strategic development, but it didn't take long to realize Madison wasn't interested in learning the business. She was interested in owning it. She started showing up in my meetings, asking questions. The wrong ones. Questions about branding, about marketability, about licensing deals. Never about the science. Then came the real red flags. My access to certain labs? Restricted. Key members of my research team? Quietly reassigned. My funding reduced? Little by little, just enough to squeeze me out. And then, one day, I walked into a meeting about my own research, only to find Madison sitting in my chair, smiling, acting like she belonged there. That's when I knew they were pushing me out. That night, I called Sarah. Document everything, she advised. Emails, funding cuts, meeting minutes, everything. And most importantly, file your own patent independently, so I did. Every breakthrough, every test result. Everything that wasn't directly funded by Carter Pharmaceuticals. I worked nights, weekends, used my personal lab equipment, had every development meticulously verified by independent witnesses. I built my case like a loaded gun, and now I was ready to pull the trigger. A new email appeared in my inbox. Urgent. IP transfer documentation required. They had no idea what was about to hit them. I forwarded it to Sarah without opening it. Then I stood, grabbed my laptop, and walked out of my lab. I wasn't staying to watch them play their game. I was about to burn their entire board down. They think I'm walking away quietly. Let them think that. Let them feel safe. Let them believe they've won. Because the moment they tried to steal from me, I had already set their downfall in motion. I pulled into the underground parking lot of my lawyer's office, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My pulse was steady, my breathing controlled, but beneath it all, rage simmered like molten glass. They thought they could erase me. They thought they could steal my life's work and slap Madison's name on it like a cheap brand label. They had no idea I was 10 steps ahead. I stepped into the elevator, the cool metal walls reflecting my face back at me, sharp, determined, unbreakable. Sarah was waiting in the conference room when I arrived, surrounded by stacks of documents, timelines, and files, meticulously organized across the table. "Right on schedule," she said, sliding a fresh printout toward me. "Your father just tried to file the patent transfer paperwork." I glanced at the page, flagged, suspended. Under investigation. I exhaled slowly. Perfect. "How long until they realize they just walked into a legal minefield?" I asked, setting my laptop on the table. Sarah smirked. "I'd say about now." Almost as if on cue, my phone vibrated. Dad. I let it ring. Let him feel the panic clawing at his throat. "You should probably answer," Sarah mused. "Let him sweat a little, but don't let him think you're running." I picked up the call, keeping my voice cool. Aurora speaking. A sharp intake of breath. Then, anger. "What the hell have you done?" I leaned back in my chair, watching Sarah type something on her laptop. She didn't even look up. We both already knew how this conversation would go. "I have no idea what you mean, Dad," I said evenly. "You filed an independent patent? Behind my back?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Did I? That's strange. I thought you said my research belonged to Carter Pharmaceuticals, but if that were true, why would my patent be legally recognized as independent property?" Silence. Just for a second, I could feel the realization sinking in, the cracks forming in his carefully constructed facade. Then his voice dropped into something cold, calculated. "You're making a mistake, Aurora. You don't understand how the industry works. You think you're in control, but you have no idea what you're up against." Ah, there it is. The veiled threat. The warning meant to intimidate me into submission. I let out a soft laugh. "And here I thought you raised me to be smarter than that." I hung up. Sarah let out a low whistle. Damn, I almost feel bad for him. I didn't, not for a second, because my father had made one fatal mistake. He thought I would crumble. He forgot who raised me. 2 years ago, I started noticing the shift. It was subtle at first. My father's meetings without me, the hushed conversations when I entered the room, the way my research funding started to dwindle, little by little, just enough to push me out without making it obvious. And then there was Madison. She walked into Carter Pharmaceuticals as if she had built it herself. My father paraded her around like some prodigal genius, shoving her into high-level meetings she had no business attending. But the worst part, the way people started listening to her, not because she was intelligent, not because she understood the science, but because she knew how to speak their language. Money, power, branding. She was a walking PR campaign with a fake MBA and an Instagram perfect smile. She didn't earn her way to the top. She was placed there. At my expense. The moment I realized what was happening, I knew I had to act. So I did what no one expected me to do. I played the long game. I started documenting everything. Every meeting I was excluded from, every budget cut, every email where Madison was copied in on my research updates, every attempt to erase me from my own work. And then I built my own escape route. I secured independent funding. I formed a shadow research team, scientists who believed in me, not Carter Pharmaceuticals. And most importantly, I filed my own patent. It wasn't easy. I worked nights, weekends, sacrificing everything to ensure that when the time came, I'd be untouchable. Because I knew, sooner or later, they'd make their move. And when they did, I'd be ready. I turned to Sarah. What's next? She tapped her fingers against the table, considering. First, we let them squirm. The patent transfer attempt will trigger a deeper investigation. USPTO will be all over them. Your father's legal team is probably in full-blown crisis mode as we speak. Good. Let them panic, she continued. Second, you need to go public before they do. Madison's been running her mouth, hasn't she? I nodded. She'd been building her image as the new face of biotech for months now, posting on LinkedIn, appearing at conferences, giving interviews about her upcoming medical breakthrough. She'd built an empire of lies, and I was about to burn it down. Sarah smiled. Then let's take that away from her. I spent the next 12 hours making sure the world knew the truth. I released a statement through my own professional channels, outlining the true origins of my research. I sent private messages to key investors, the ones who had supported my work from the beginning. I contacted journalists, giving them the real story before Carter Pharmaceuticals had a chance to spin their version. The reaction was immediate. Scientists backed me. Investors questioned the legitimacy of Carter Pharmaceuticals' claims. The media started digging. By the next morning, Madison's name was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. The first crack in their foundation came at 9:42 a.m. A leaked internal memo from Carter Pharmaceuticals landed in the inbox of every major biotech journalist. Subject line: Urgent Crisis Management, Unauthorized Patent Filing. In the body of the email, one sentence stood out. Dr. Carter's independent patent filing may present legal obstacles to the commercialization of our new technology. Translation: they knew they fucked up. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Madison was no longer a rising star, she was a fraud. Carter Pharmaceuticals wasn't a leader in innovation, they were a company in damage control. And my father, he was about to lose everything. I leaned back in my chair, watching the chaos unfold in real time. They thought they were stealing from me, but all they did was dig their own graves. Madison thinks she's won. She parades around like a queen, basking in the stolen spotlight, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with investors who believe every word dripping from her perfectly rehearsed speeches. She thinks this is her moment. She thinks, I'm finished. But Madison doesn't know the storm brewing beneath her feet. She doesn't know that the foundation she's standing on is already crumbling. And the best part? She built her own downfall, brick by brick. The first time I saw her after the betrayal was at a biotech summit in San Francisco, less than a week after my father's failed patent transfer. I hadn't planned on going until Sarah sent me a message. Madison's giving a keynote speech. They're branding her as the woman revolutionizing cancer treatment. Thought you'd like to watch. My blood boiled as I read those words. Not because I was surprised, because I knew exactly what was coming next. I sat in the audience, front row, wearing a sleek black blazer, my expression neutral as Madison took the stage. She was dressed for the cameras, powder blue blazer, soft curls, just enough makeup to look polished but not overdone, the perfect image of a young female pioneer in biotech. Except for one problem. She had no idea what she was talking about. Our new targeted drug delivery system is set to redefine cancer treatment as we know it, Madison declared, pausing for applause. Using molecular recognition technology, we can precisely target diseased cells while minimizing damage to healthy tissue. I nearly laughed. She was reading directly from my research summary, not in her own words, not even rephrased, word for word. I glanced at Sarah, sitting beside me. She smirked, already knowing what I was thinking. This wasn't just arrogance, this was incompetence. Madison had stolen my work, stolen my patent, stolen my name. And still, she couldn't even explain the science behind it. She finished her speech, beaming, soaking in the applause. She thought she had the crowd. She thought she had everyone fooled. And then the moderator spoke. Fascinating. Now, Madison, could you explain to us exactly how your molecular recognition system differentiates between healthy and cancerous cells at the biochemical level? The smile on Madison's face froze. Her fingers tightened around the microphone, and in that moment, I saw it. Fear. She had no idea how to answer. I watched as she stumbled, searching for words, grasping at anything that sounded remotely scientific. Well, the receptors, they bind to specific proteins that differentiate based on the silence. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. Sarah leaned over and whispered, "This is better than I expected." Madison swallowed hard, flashing a nervous smile. I mean, our research team has been working on refining the process, of course, and, these things are complex. The moderator didn't let her off the hook. But surely you understand the biochemical interaction behind it. Madison's eyes darted across the room, searching for an escape, and then she saw me. Her entire body tensed. For a split second, her mask slipped. She knew I had come to watch her burn. I tilted my head slightly, meeting her gaze with an expression of pure, icy amusement. Her panic deepened. And just like that, her house of cards started to collapse. After the summit, the cracks in Madison's stolen empire began to show. Investors started asking questions. Journalists started digging deeper. And as the pressure mounted, Madison did what she always did when things got tough. She ran to my father. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A call from Dad. I let it ring. Then another. And another. He was panicking. I let him sit in his panic. Finally, Sarah's phone lit up. She glanced at it, then at me. "It's your father. Want me to take it?" I nodded. She answered, putting the call on speaker. "Robert," she said smoothly, "to what do we owe the pleasure?" "You know damn well why I'm calling," my father snapped. "Madison's speech yesterday. Who the hell leaked the questions to the moderator?" I raised an eyebrow. He thought we had set her up. Sarah smirked. "Robert, do you really think we needed to? Your other daughter, did that all on her own." Silence. Then a long exhale. He knew we were right. "Listen," he said, his voice forced into something almost diplomatic. "Aurora, we need to talk. Privately." Now it was my turn to smirk. "Why? You didn't want to talk to me before you handed my life's work to Madison? What's changed, Aurora?" "No," my voice was sharp, cutting through whatever excuse he was about to throw at me. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." I ended the call. Sarah leaned back, grinning. "That felt good, didn't it?" It did. But I wasn't done yet. Because Madison and my father still thought they had time. They thought they could spin this, control the narrative, salvage their reputation. They had no idea that by tomorrow, there wouldn't be anything left to salvage. The breaking point came at exactly 10:43 a.m. the next morning. Headline: Carter Pharmaceuticals facing potential patent fraud investigation. The article spread like wildfire. It detailed everything: the attempted theft of my patent, the legal red flags triggered by the transfer, the internal company emails leaked by anonymous sources. By noon, Carter Pharmaceuticals stock had plummeted 14%. By 3 p.m., major investors were demanding an emergency board meeting. By 6 p.m., my father was seen storming out of the company's headquarters, red-faced and furious, and by 8 p.m., Madison was calling me. I stared at my phone, watching her name flash on the screen. Sarah looked at me. "Well?" I let it ring, then I silenced it. "Let her suffer," Sarah grinned. "Damn, you're ruthless." I met her gaze, my expression unreadable. "No," I said quietly, "I'm just getting started. They think this is rock bottom. They think the worst has already happened. The bad press, the sinking stock prices, the public humiliation. They have no idea. Because I'm not done yet. Not even close." By the time Madison's third call came in, I knew she was unraveling. I let it ring. Then the text started. Madison. "Aurora, we need to talk. Please call me back. Madison, this is serious. The board is turning on us." Madison. You don't understand what's happening. Please. Oh, I understood perfectly. Carter Pharmaceuticals was spiraling, and for the first time in her life, Madison couldn't manipulate her way out of it. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the desk. Then, one final message popped up. Dad, if you have any decency left, you'll stop this before it goes too far. Too far? They stole from me. They erased me. They tried to destroy my career. And now that the consequences were catching up to them, suddenly I was the one going too far. I let out a slow breath. Time to finish this. Sarah and I arrived at the US Patent Office at exactly 8:55 a.m. the next morning. By 9 a.m., we were sitting across from 2 investigators and a legal analyst, all reviewing the evidence we had spent months compiling. Every email, every funding cut, every internal memo that proved Carter Pharmaceuticals had systematically attempted to erase my contributions. And then came the final nail in the coffin. Sarah slid a folder across the table. This, she said, her voice razor sharp, is a sworn affidavit from one of Carter Pharmaceuticals' senior researchers who has agreed to testify that Madison Carter had zero involvement in the development of the targeted drug delivery system. One of the investigators looked up, adjusting his glasses. She outright lied? He asked. Oh, it's worse than that, Sarah said, leaning forward. She falsified credentials, presented fraudulent research, and attempted to claim ownership of intellectual property that was never legally hers to begin with. Silence. The analyst closed the folder with a quiet snap. We'll be moving forward with the fraud investigation, he said, his expression unreadable. Given the severity of these claims, Carter Pharmaceuticals could be facing serious consequences. I exhaled slowly. Good. But I wasn't done, not yet. That afternoon, I scheduled an exclusive interview, not with some minor tech blog, not with a third-rate publication that could be brushed aside, with the Wall Street Journal. By the time I stepped into the studio, I had already crafted my message. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. The cameras rolled. The journalist leaned forward, eyes sharp. Dr. Carter, can you clarify what really happened with your research? I folded my hands in my lap, keeping my voice steady. Carter Pharmaceuticals attempted to erase my contributions, misrepresent my work, and transfer my patent to an individual who had no scientific background. They did so knowing full well that my research was independent. The interviewer nodded, and that individual was... I didn't hesitate. Madison Carter. Her name hit the airwaves like a bullet. Within hours, the internet exploded. Madison Carter Exposed started trending. Journalists demanded answers, investors pulled out, and the board, they smelled blood. At exactly 5:42 p.m., I got the text I had been waiting for. Sarah, Madison's been removed from her position. Board is voting on your father next. I smiled. Less than an hour later, it was official. My father was no longer CEO of Carter Pharmaceuticals. I walked past the Carter Pharmaceuticals building the next morning. Employees stood outside in hushed conversations. I caught snippets, words like investigation, legal trouble, and fraud charges. Then, as if on cue, Madison stepped out of the revolving doors. Her face was pale, her perfect composure shattered. She saw me, stopped, and for the first time in her life, she looked truly afraid. I let her stand there, drowning in the wreckage of her own making. Then, without a word, I walked away, because Madison Carter was no longer my problem. She was just another footnote in my success story. By the time the headlines settled, Carter Pharmaceuticals was in free fall. But me? I was just getting started. Carter Biotech was officially launching, with funding secured, a new team assembled, and my research intact. I was about to do what I did best, change the world. And this time, no one was stealing it from me. They lost everything, I gained everything. Carter Pharmaceuticals was nothing more than a collapsing empire now. Bleeding investors, scrambling for credibility, gasping for air like a sinking ship. And I was the one who sunk it. Madison had been thrown out first, her fake credentials, fraudulent research, and sheer incompetence finally catching up to her. Then my father. The board had turned on him like starving wolves, stripping him of his power, his influence, his entire legacy. The company he had spent his life building no longer belonged to him. And me? I was exactly where I belonged. At the top, the launch of Carter Biotech had been nothing short of explosive. With the scandals surrounding Carter Pharmaceuticals still fresh, investors were desperate to place their money somewhere safer, somewhere that actually valued science over manipulation. And I gave them exactly what they wanted. Within 2 months, we had secured $75 million in Series A funding. Within 6 months, we had multiple clinical trials underway. And now, 1 year later, I stood in front of a packed auditorium at the International Biotech Conference, preparing to unveil our latest breakthrough. I adjusted the microphone, paused, looked out at the hundreds of faces watching me. Scientists, investors, world leaders in medical innovation. Then I spoke. For years, I was told that innovation belonged to those who knew how to monetize it, that science should take a backseat to business, that progress should be dictated by profit. I let the words sink in. But science is not a commodity. It is not a brand. It is not a marketing strategy. Science belongs to those who dare to push boundaries, not those who steal from the ones who do. The applause was deafening. I met Sarah's gaze in the front row. She gave me a subtle nod. This was my moment, and this time, no one was taking it from me. The headlines the next morning were exactly what I had been waiting for. Carter Biotech poised to revolutionize cancer treatment. Dr. Aurora Carter reclaims her legacy. Former Carter Pharmaceuticals CEO faces fraud investigation. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee, watching the world finally recognize what I had known all along. I won. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I already knew who it was. I let it ring twice before answering. "Medicine," I said smoothly. Silence. Then a deep inhale. She sounded wrecked. Her voice cracked. "I didn't call to fight. No more arrogance. No more rehearsed speeches. Just defeat." I waited. "I lost everything," she admitted. "Dad won't even return my calls. Investors won't touch me. No one will hire me." I took another sip of my coffee. Sounds like a personal problem. Madison exhaled shakily. "Aurora, She stopped herself, swallowed her pride. "I'm sorry." For the first time since this started, she sounded like she meant it. She wasn't Madison Carter, the business prodigy, the rising star, the woman who was handed my work on a silver platter. She was just a girl who had played the wrong game and lost. I could have rubbed it in, could have destroyed her even more, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Then prove it." A pause. "What?" "If you're really sorry," I said, "then stop trying to steal other people's success and start actually earning your own." Silence. Then a quiet, broken whisper. "I don't know how." I closed my eyes. Of course she didn't. Madison had spent her whole life pretending. She didn't know how to be real. I could have helped her, could have given her advice, could have offered her a way out, but that wasn't my job. That was something she had to figure out for herself. So I simply said, "Then start learning," and I hung up. A week later, I got an email. From Madison. No subject line, just 4 words: "I enrolled in school." I stared at the screen for a long time before closing my laptop. I didn't reply. She wasn't my responsibility, but at least she was finally taking responsibility for herself. The last person to crawl out of the wreckage was my father. I wasn't surprised when he showed up at my office, but I was surprised at how old he looked. Gone was the powerful CEO who had once dictated the future of Carter Pharmaceuticals. All that remained was a man who had lost everything. I let him sit across from me, watching as he struggled to meet my gaze. Finally, he said, "I suppose you're happy now." I tilted my head. "You mean happy that my research is finally being used for actual medical progress instead of corporate greed? Or happy that I built something better than you ever could?" His jaw tightened. He hated this. Hated that I had won. Hated that, in the end, I had been right. He exhaled. "I made mistakes." I raised an eyebrow. "That's one way to put it." A long pause, then his voice dropped lower. "Carter Biotech is going to surpass everything Carter Pharmaceuticals ever did." I leaned back, a slow smile curving my lips. Already has. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. I don't expect forgiveness, Aurora. I just wanted you to know that I regret it. I studied him for a long moment. He looked small, defeated. And yet, this wasn't my burden to carry. So I simply said, then live with it. And I watched as my father, the man who had tried to raise me, walked out of my office for the last time. The next morning, I arrived at my lab early. The sun was rising, casting golden light through the glass windows. On my desk sat a small package. I opened it carefully, then froze. Inside was my mother's old lab notebook. There was a note attached. From Dr. James Chen, my mother's oldest colleague. She always knew you would carry on her legacy. I think she would have been proud. I traced my fingers over my mother's handwriting, feeling the weight of everything I had fought for. Everything I had lost. Everything I had won. A knock at the door. Sarah poked her head in. You ready? I looked around at my lab, at the future we were building, at the work that no one would ever take from me again. I smiled, more than ready, and as I stepped forward, I knew this was just the beginning.